Studio Bleu presents Too Expensive, an adaptation of Leo Tolstoy, read by Guy de Maupassant, February 23, 2022. All rights reserved. Near the borders of France and Italy, on the shores of the Mediterranean Sea, lies a tiny little kingdom called Monaco. Many small European country towns could boast for having more inhabitants than Monaco's kingdom. Monaco's population is only 7,000 citizens. The kingdom of Monaco is so tiny, if all the land were equally divided, there could not be an acre for each inhabitant. But Monaco's kingdom is real, and it has a palace, courtesans, courts, ministers, bishops, generals, and an army. Monaco's army is not a large one, only 60 men, but it is an army. Monaco's people pay taxes to live in the kingdom, as people do elsewhere. A tax on tobacco, wine, and other spirits, plus a poll tax, is collected. Even though the people of Monaco drank and smoked as people do in other countries, there were so few of them, and taxes collected were never enough. The king found it hard to use such revenues to feed his courts, officials, and himself. The king had to find a durable source of income. That special revenue came from Monaco's gambling house. People come to Monaco to play roulette. Whether they win or lose, the house kept a percentage on every bet. From that profit, the gambling house pays a large sum of money every year to the kingdom. The reason the gambling establishment paid so much money is simple. It is the only gambling establishment left in Europe. Some German sovereigns used to operate gambling houses of the same kind, but years ago they were banished. Is there a reason why they stopped? Well, it's because these gambling establishments did so much harm to people. For example, a man would come in and try his luck. He could risk all he had and lose it. The same day, he could return, even try betting again with borrowed money, and lose that too. In despair, he could end up drowned or shot. So German kings protected their subjects from making a living this way. However, there were no one who could step in to stop the king of Monaco. He remained a monopoly in the European gambling business. Nowadays, everyone in Europe who wants to gamble goes to Monaco. Whether they win or lose, Monaco's king profits from it. As the proverb says, you cannot build stone palaces with honest labor. And Monaco's kingdom knows gambling is a dirty business. What could be done? The kingdom and its people had to live somehow, and taxes needed to be levied from alcohol and tobacco. But that wasn't a nice thing. Monaco's king lives, reigns, and rakes in the money, holds court ceremonies like real kings. Monaco's kingdom holds coronation levees, reward sentences, pardons, review councils, laws, and courts of justice, just like other kings, only to a smaller scale. It happened a few years ago when a murder took place in the kingdom of Monaco. But the people of Monaco are peace-loving citizens, and such a thing had not happened before in the kingdom. For the first time, the court assembled ceremoniously and tried the case in the most judicial manner. Judges, prosecutors, juries, and defense attorneys argued, judged, and condemned the criminal to the highest sentence possible. the guillotine. The verdict was sent to the king. He read and confirmed it. "If the murderer must be executed, execute him," said the king. But there was a problem on the matter. Monaco's kingdom had neither a guillotine nor an executioner. The ministers deliberated and decided to send a letter of inquiry to the French government, asking whether the French government could consider lending them a guillotine and an executioner to cut off the criminal's head. The French could fill in the details as to what the cost would be. A week later, the reply came: a guillotine and a French executioner could be supplied, and the total expense amounted to 16,000 francs. The findings were quickly sent to the king. He thought over the matter and exclaimed, 16,000 francs! This wretched man is not worth that much money. Is there any way this could be done a bit cheaper? 16,000 francs, my foot! A tax would have to be levied on the population and could amount to more than 2 francs per person. A council was called to consider the matter. It was decided to send another letter of inquiry to the King of Italy. France is a republic. It shows no respect or mercy to kings. On the other hand, the King of Italy was a brother monarch. He might propose a better deal. The Italian government wrote back the next day. They would have the pleasure of supplying both the guillotine and an Italian executioner for a meager cost of 12,000 francs, travel expenses included. This was cheaper, but still, it seemed too much. The rascal isn't worth that much money. Taxes levied on Monaco citizens could cost nearly 2 francs per inhabitant. Another council was called. They discussed and considered how it could be done with less money. Could a Monaco army soldier cut the criminal's head for less? An army general was called in for talk. Could you find us a soldier who could cut off the criminal's head? In war, the army doesn't mind killing people. In fact, killing is what they were trained to do. The general talked it over with the soldiers to see whether one of them could do the job. But none of the soldiers wanted to do it. They said, "No, we don't know how to do this." That kind of a thing was not taught to us during army training. What could be done? The ministers went on to deliberate. They assigned a commission, a committee, and a subcommittee. Lastly, they decided the best thing would be to change the death sentence into life imprisonment. This way may demonstrate the king's mercy and be cheaper at the same time. The king agreed, and the matter was settled. The only problem was, in Monaco, there were no suitable prison for lifetime imprisonment. There's plenty of tiny places used for locking up criminals, and they're kept there temporarily. But none were prisons fit for permanent occupancy. However, not long ago, a place was found. The criminal was incarcerated there, while a guard kept watch over him. The guard was to check on the criminal and brought him food from the palace kitchen. The prisoner remained there month after month. A year had passed. Monaco's kingdom auditors, while looking over the items on the budget, income versus expenditure, noticed a new expense item. This was the expense for the criminal upkeep. It wasn't a small figure, as expected. The guard had to be paid, and there was a cost associated to the man's food. The amount came to more than 600 francs for that year. And what's worse, the criminal was still young and healthy. He might live another 50 years. The matter becomes serious when communicated to the king. How could this be? The king summoned his ministers and said to them, "You must find some cheaper way of dealing with this rascal. The present plan is over budget. The ministers met, debated, and reconsidered. One of them said, "Gentlemen, in my opinion, we must dismiss the guard." "And then what?" replied another minister. "The criminal could run away. He could escape." "Exactly," exclaimed the first gentleman. "Let him run away, and good riddance." The ministers reported the result of their debate to the monarch, and the king agreed. The guard was dismissed. They waited to see what will happen. Come dinner time, the criminal came out of his cell, and not finding the guard, went straight to the king's kitchen and grabbed his own food. He considered that a blessing and returned to prison, shut the cell door himself, and spent the rest of the night locked up inside. The same thing happened the next day. The prisoner opened the door to his cell, went out for dinner at the proper time, and as for running away, that thought had never crossed his mind. What could be done? The ministers debated on the matter again, and it was decided, we need to tell him straight out. We don't need to keep him in jail. Meanwhile, the minister of justice had the prisoner brought in for talk. "Why didn't you just run away?" said the minister. "There is no guard keeping watch over you. Why didn't you just run away? You could go wherever you like, and the king would mind you leaving." The criminal responded, "I heard what you said. The king didn't mind me leaving, but I have nowhere to go. What can I do? You have ruined my life with a lifetime sentence. People turn their backs on me. With a criminal record, nobody will hire me. This isn't fair. First, once you sentenced me to death, you needed to have me executed, but you didn't. I didn't complain about that. Second, you sentenced me to life imprisonment and put a guard to keep watch and bring me food. After a time, you took him away. I had to go out and grab my own food. Again, I didn't complain. But now you're proposing to let me escape. You said I could leave prison and run away. See, you have to make up your mind, because I cannot agree to that. You may do as you like, but I am not running out of jail." What could be done? The council was summoned again. What action could we take? The criminal refused to leave. The ministers debated and reconsidered. The only way to get rid of the criminal was to offer him a pension, and the ministers reported their decision to the king of Monaco. "There's nothing else left to do," they said. "We must get rid of him somehow." The sum of 600 francs per year was agreed. The news was announced to the prisoner. The criminal said with a grin, "Well, now, I don't mind leaving, so long as you promise to pay me on time." The matter was settled. The prisoner received 1/3 of his annuity in advance and left the king's domain. He lived only at a 15-minute train ride to Monaco. He emigrated and settled just across the border, where he bought a small house and started gardening. He lived happy and comfortable. He goes out sometime, gets paid his pension. After receiving it, he went on to the same gambling house, spent 2 or 3 francs. Sometimes he wins, sometimes he loses. And at the end of the day, he returned home and lived peacefully and well. It is fortunate the criminal didn't commit his crime in a country where the state could spare no expense in having a man's head cut off or to keep him locked up in jail indefinitely.